I've covered how the Elation path works, and I've also covered the first Elation support. So now it's time to cover our very first Elation DPS. But is Sparxie even a DPS? Or is she surprisingly more of a sub DPS in disguise? While at first glance, Sparxie might just seem like a modern version of Qingque or Imbibitor Lunai, I think there's a lot of untapped potential with how her kit is designed that we'll discuss in this video. So let's get straight into what Sparxie does before we analyze some of the implications within her kit. But first, a word from the sponsor of today's video. LD Shop is a safe and reliable top-up site that allows you to buy currency across multiple different games, including Honkai Star Rail, Genshin Impact, among other games. They offer prices at a discount, from anywhere up to 13% to 25% cheaper than topping up in-game. Not only are the prices cheaper, but they make topping up completely effortless. All you need is your server and game ID, and you're good to go. No hassle at all, and no personal information required whatsoever. After purchase, you can see that the Jades are sent to my account within 5 minutes. There are no downsides to using LD Shop for your purchases, as the prices on LD Shop are strictly better than the prices in-game. But the upsides don't stop there. Users who register using my link in the description below will get an exclusive 15% and 5% coupon, which can save you up to $50. Additionally, if you spend $80 in total, you can earn an Express Supply Pass for completely free. If you want to top up at discounted prices with no downsides, using a website and method that has been approved as safe by multiple large content creators in the space, then click the link in the description below to head over to LD Shop and start saving money on your gacha game top-ups right away. Before we can discuss Sparxie in more depth, we have to go over a basic understanding of what her kit does, starting with her basic attack, which is just a regular basic attack, dealing fire damage since Sparxie is a fire elation character. Sparxie's skill is very similar to Qingque's and Imbibitor Lunai's, where she can continuously press her skill without ending her turn in order to keep consuming skill points to enhance her next basic attack. She can consume skill points up to 20 times during her skill. What does consuming skill points do? First off, it increases the base multiplier of her enhanced basic attack. Secondly, it will randomly trigger one of two effects. Consuming a skill point will either have a chance of giving the team only one stack of punchline, or it'll have a chance to give 2 punchline stacks and refund 2 skill points, so that Sparxie can keep consuming even more skill points for even more punchline and damage. This technically means that if you keep randomly getting the effect that refunds skill points every time you consume a skill point, you could theoretically just never stop pressing Sparxie's skill until you obviously reach the cap of 20 times. Unfortunately, the chance of triggering the second effect is much lower than the chance of triggering the basic 1 punchline gain effect, so you would need some lottery winning RNG to make it that far. If the sight of RNG in Sparxie's kit is concerning to you, don't worry, this is the only part of RNG associated with her kit, although it is a pretty big part of her kit, so some of you might be very put off by the fact that you have to gamble within her kit. Again, it's giving Qingque vibes. As for her enhanced basic attack, she unleashes it after you've decided you're done pressing her skill, or after you run out of skill points to press her skill. Her enhanced basic attack is very simple, doing blast damage similarly to Qingque or Imbibitor Lunai. This does not deal elation damage, so it isn't buffed by elation stat or punchline stacks. The elation damage parts of her kit will come in later, trust me. Her ultimate is, once again, very reminiscent of Qingque's, in that it's just one big AoE attack. That's all. The weird thing about Sparxie's ultimate is that it scales off of her elation stat for its multiplier, but it doesn't actually deal elation damage, meaning it isn't buffed by elation buffs or punchline. It also gives the team 2 punchline stacks, and it has a pretty hefty energy cost of 160. Now let's finally talk about where Sparxie gets her elation damage from. Her talent. Sparxie's talent takes effect when she's in the certified banger state, which occurs after an aha instant, and it makes her enhanced basic attack deal fire elation damage with a small multiplier. But more importantly, every time she consumes a skill point during her skill, she buffs her enhanced basic attack and causes it to deal an additional instance of fire elation damage to one random enemy. Essentially, the more you're able to consume skill points and spam her skill to buff her enhanced basic attack, the harder Sparxie will be able to nuke enemies with massive fire elation bounce attacks from her enhanced basic attack. This is where a lot of her damage is coming from, and this is what makes it so important to feed her as many skill points as possible so that she can spam her skill and stack up more bounce attacks of fire elation damage from her talent. Her talent additionally makes her ultimate deal fire elation damage to all enemies. Every elation character has a special elation skill that only triggers during the aha instant. So let's talk about Sparxie's. Sparxie's elation skill is, unsurprisingly, a big nuke of damage, starting with an AoE hit of fire elation damage to all enemies, followed by a whopping 20 hits of fire elation damage to random enemies, making it a massive bounce attack. Aha must really like bounce houses, because both Sparxie and Yao Guang's elation skills are an initial AoE attack followed by a bunch of bounce attacks. The other aspect of Sparxie's elation skill is that it gives her 1 stack of Thrill for every 10 punchline used in the aha instant, up to a maximum of 20 punchline. Thrill essentially acts as an alternative skill point for Sparxie, letting her consume stacks of Thrill before she consumes skill points. So she essentially is able to gain 2 extra special skill points, similarly to Imbibitor Lunai's yellow ball things from his ultimate, every time an aha instant instant occurs, and she can hold up to 4 of them at a time if you trigger multiple AHA instances before Sparxie has a chance to consume these special skill points. Sparxie's technique is very simple, dealing fire damage to all enemies, but not fire elation damage, so the damage is very small, and more importantly, it recovers 2 skill points at the start of battle. Her bonus abilities are very simple, similarly to Yao Guang's, which is nice. First, Sparxie buffs her own elation stat by 4% for every 100 attack that exceeds 2,000, up to a maximum of 80% bonus elation if she's able to reach 4,000 attack, which is going to require quite a few attack buffs, as well as running attack main stats on everything except for her crit chest. This is important for a few reasons. First, elation damage actually does not scale off of attack, but this bonus ability of Sparxie's essentially converts her attack stat into elation stats, allowing it to sort of scale off of attack until she reaches the cap. Secondly, elation damage does not scale off of damage percent, so Sparxie would never use a damage percent orb to begin with. This bonus ability giving her attack to elation conversion gives her some relevant stats to actually build, since we aren't able to directly build elation in our relic stats. Sparxie's second bonus ability makes her ultimate give more punchline stacks when there are more elation characters in the team. Classic mono elation team shilling. It is what it is. Technically, you only need 3 elation characters to maximize this ability, so you have 1 free slot, which is nice, I guess. Restricting it to full mono elation would have been straight up evil from Hoyo. A restriction of 3 instead of 4 is like a little bit less evil. Her last bonus ability is a team-wide crit damage buff, scaling off of the amount of punchline the team has. This buff is very easy to max out, requiring only 10 punchline stacks to get the full 40% crit damage, including her own crit damage. And these are Sparxie's bonus abilities, all offensive stats. Let's briefly go over Sparxie's Eidolons, and by the way, I will be reading the name of each Eidolon because, well, you'll understand why. Her first Eidolon is hashtag going viral, hashtag who is she? It essentially refunds 5 extra punchline after every AHA instant, and buffs the team's all-type res pen by up to 15% based on the amount of punchline you have. Honestly, it's a bit underwhelming. It feels very much like a support or a sustain Eidolon, but it has basically permanent uptime, so that's nice. Sparxie's E2 is called hashtag audience knows. This one is ironically probably the weakest in terms of the name. The names of her other Eidolons are all funnier. In terms of what it actually does though, her E2 gives her an extra turn after the AHA instant. Note that this is an extra turn, not an action advance, meaning it doesn't mess up where she is on the action bar. It also gives her 2 extra stacks of thrill, which, as you'll recall, is her special skill points. Every time she consumes one of her special skill points, she gains 10% crit damage, up to a maximum of 40% crit damage. In terms of damage buffing, this is pretty small, but the extra turn still makes this Eidolon pretty nice. The E3 is just a skill level increase as always, but it's called hashtag link up, hashtag heart skip. Maybe I'm not young enough to understand this one. The name of her E4 is hashtag locked in, hashtag face card. It gives 5 additional punchline and 25% elation bonus for 2 turns when she uses her ultimate. The name of her E5 is hashtag healing the world, hashtag good vibes only. So I guess she's living up to the name of her ultimate from her harmony form. And lastly, her E6 is named hashtag built different, hashtag going extinct. I wonder how poorly these meme names are going to age in the future for her Eidolons. Hopefully not as poorly as her meta relevance. Anyway, her E6 increases her all-type res pen by 20%, and it makes the bounce attack from her elation skill hit 1 extra time for every stack of punchline, up to a maximum of 30 extra bounces, which is a lot of bouncing since it already bounces 20 times at a baseline. Now, something you may notice is that Sparxie has a lot of skill point consumption in her kit, but for some reason, she doesn't have any ways of increasing the maximum skill points on the team. What's up with that? And the answer is, they locked that behind her signature light cone. Don't you just love it when they do that? Sparxie's signature light cone increases her crit damage by 36%, and then it increases the maximum amount of skill points the team can hold by 1 for every elation character on the team, up to a maximum of 3 extra skill points. Again, at least they didn't lock it to 4 elation characters, I guess. The hilarious thing about her light cone and her bonus ability stacking up to 3 elation characters is that we don't even have 3 elation characters in the game yet as of the time of her release, so it'll be physically impossible to fulfill these conditions. Truly an aha-worthy joke. Anyway, her light cone also gives her a stacking 5% elation buff and allows her to ignore 5% of the enemy's defense when dealing elation damage for every skill point she consumes, up to 4 stacks, so 20% bonus elation and defense ignore total. These buffs do not have a turn limit, so once she stacks it 4 times, she'll have these buffs permanently throughout the battle. So now that we've gone over her whole kit, you may be thinking, this just looks like a main DPS. Why did you start this video off saying there was sub DPS potential in her kit? After all, she's the greediest character in the whole game when it comes to skill points, and the large majority of her kit is dedicated to dealing damage, right? Yes, but you are forgetting one of the biggest parts of Sparxie's kit. One of the things she does better than anyone else. Punchline stacks. Okay, she's one of the only 2 elation characters in the game, so it's not like there are many punchline stack generators to compete against, but Sparxie generates so much punchline when she's able to to spam her skill, and especially when she gets good RNG from her skill, that it feels like that's what she was mainly made to do. Punchline is one of the few unique ways of buffing elation damage, and Sparxie's kit directly utilizes punchline stacks in order to add more multipliers of elation damage to her kit. If a future Elation DPS also utilizes punchline to buff their kit, in addition to already using punchline to buff their elation damage, then Sparxie could easily be the best option for stacking punchline. To be clear, at the current moment, when Sparxie releases, she is very clearly a main DPS. There is no character that could take advantage of the sub DPS potential Sparxie has. However, between Sparxie's ability to stack punchline, her third bonus ability being a team-wide crit damage buff, and her first Eidolon being a team-wide res pen buff, I am getting heavy Evernight and Anaxa vibes from Sparxie. Both of these characters are characters who function very well as main DPSs, but are also designed to be a sub DPS for another character. Obviously, in order for Sparxie to work as a sub DPS, her main DPS would need to have zero reliance on skill points so that Sparxie can eat up all the skill points for more damage and, more importantly, for more punchline stacks. There is definitely a world where the perfect main DPS to complement Sparxie just never releases, thus making Sparxie only a main DPS who never actually gets a team that can make use of her as a sub DPS. I'm not saying Sparxie is for sure going to end up being the Evernight of Elation teams. I just think that Hoyo is most likely following a very similar pattern to the Mono Remembrance team, and I could see Sparxie being the Evernight rather than being the Aglaea or the Casteress. But this is not me suggesting you pull for Sparxie for her sub DPS potential. Definitely do not do that. If she does end up fulfilling the Evernight role, just pull her on her rerun if you want her for that reason. I just see more potential beyond what's initially obvious with Sparxie's kit, and wanted to discuss what Hoyo could be cooking for the Elation path moving forward. As far as mono Elation goes, Sparxie only needs 3 Elation characters to maximize her kit, leaving 1 slot open for Harmony Sparkle, who is currently one of her best in slot teammates. The way I could see things going is that Sparkle is her best teammate for hypercarry Sparxie, but then you transition Sparxie into a full Elation team when she's being played as a sub DPS, where you aren't trying to buff her damage as much. Again, the team would need ways of offering her a similar amount of skill points as Sparkle, so that she can still build punchline stacks as effectively as she currently does. And I could see the Elation Sustain being an SP generator, since sustain units are low-key some of the most broken units in the game nowadays. Hello, Hyacinth. But this is all just pure speculation for the future. As of right now, Sparxie is a main DPS and should be viewed as such. She's sort of a jack of all trades DPS, where she's decent in both AoE and single target scenarios due to so many of her attacks being blast or AoE attacks, followed by bounce attacks, which are designed to be able to handle all sorts of different enemy scenarios. I will say that at the current moment, she feels very tied to Yaoguang, unsurprisingly, considering Yaoguang is the only Elation support in the whole game. You might see Sparxie's reliance on skill point consumption and assume she needs Sparkle more than any other character, but honestly, so much of Sparxie's damage comes from the AHA instant that she can sort of get away with replacing Sparkle with another support like Tribby or Cypher or RMC. You generally wouldn't use Sunday or Branya with her because she can't use their damage percent buffs, so a lot of their kit is being wasted. Don't get me wrong, Sparkle is still part of her best team for sure, but the most important piece of the puzzle for Sparxie is definitely Yaoguang. The Elation path as a whole feels very exclusive and restrictive, where you want every Elation puzzle piece slotted together in order to create Exodia, even more so than the Remembrance team, and we only have 2 Elation characters right now. Will it only get better or worse with future Elation characters? Who knows? Personally, I don't have high hopes for these restrictions getting any less harsh due to the way the Elation path works, with Elation characters being the only ones capable of offering and benefiting from the new Elation mechanics like Punchline and the AHA instant. It's a little bit rough, but that's just how I feel about it. How do you feel about Sparxie's kit and the Elation path as a whole? Have I opened your eyes to the potential of Sparxie being more similar to Evernight rather than Casteress or Aglaea, or are you still not convinced? If you have any questions or thoughts on this subject, be sure to leave a comment down below, and like the video if you found it helpful or enjoyable at all. I have more content coming soon on my overall thoughts on the Elation path, and it'll be a lot more in-depth considering I'll have first-hand experience with the path and the characters. So be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on that. I'll also of course continue covering the beta updates for these characters, as well as releasing fully informed guides for them once their kits are closer to being finalized. But with all of that said, thank you so much for watching, and until next time!